All right, welcome back again to Brown Neck Reviews, and I am that guy from Brown Neck Reviews. So tonight we're going to be talking about my Kyosho Javelin. Okay, now this is the re-release version of the original 1/10 four-wheel drive variant of the Optima. The Optima, which came out in 1985, designed by a guy named Akira Kogawa. Um, Pretty cool name, Akira, and all that. And he made some pretty cool cars, and this was one of them. This was actually my favorite of the series, and it what made it unique was its roll cage that it used instead of the standard Lexan body at the time. The Javelin was the second in that series, and when it came out, it was a little bit more expensive than the Optima, which was already expensive, especially to a kid like me. During that time, my first RC car was to me a Falcon, and when I saw the Javelin, I mean, it looked like something that you could actually see racing on TV during that time, because of course there was no internet or YouTube or anything, and that was the media that we were looking at and watching during during the late 80s or mid 80s to the 90s. So this is a reproduction of that, which is part of the Kyosho Vintage series, which I'm so happy that they had released, because the actual vintage one of these before the Kyosho Vintage series came out were going on eBay for like something like $1,000 for a clean Kyosho Javelin, and mostly that price was because of this cage right here, which was one of the most sought after excuse me collector pieces. A couple, maybe I think 10 years ago, when everybody was all the old people like me wanted to start buying up their toys that they never got when they were kids. And this was one of the toys, I guess, during that time that almost every kid that was into RC cars was was looking at. During that time, it when it came out, it was still competitive, but I think the Optima Mid, when that came out, that basically took the class. That and the 870C or the YZ10 from Yokomo were basically the cars to have, and also the Schumacher Cat. But this right here, the design of it is just, I don't know, it does something for me, especially with the metal chassis and the rear motor. It just looks the part of a race car, which is why I liked it so much. It wasn't foreign; it didn't have that regular plastic shell. So the re-release was that Kyosho came out with was actually, they had really did their homework and fixed a lot of the things that the original one didn't have. For one, the servo is now mounted on a proper servo mount using screws. The original way of mounting the servo on the Optima was using double-sided tape. Basically, we called it servo tape, and taping it to the top plate. All right. Now you actually have a mount that you can actually connect the servos to using screws, so it's a lot more stable and rigid compared to the previous version. Also, the hexes were changed out, so now instead of being friction hexes, 12 millimeter hexes, they were changed out to a captured hex using a screw on the hexes. And also in the drivetrain, they added a slipper in the gearbox. I think the original one did not have a a slipper counter gear on there, and so that was, to me, I think, a major change that they had. So let's look at my version now of that car. The original Javelin was basically a Optima with the roll cage, and so it didn't have this cool looking gold chassis on there. All right, this chassis is actually from the re-released Turbo Optima Gold. Okay, and the original one had a silver chassis, and it did not also have the rear motor guard that you see here. All right, the gold chassis was called the Celebration chassis, I think, and that was an option for all the Optimas at the time, including the Turbo Optima. Now, the Turbo Optima re-release has the gold chassis included, but originally it did not, and the original Turbo Optima also didn't have the optional motor guard that is on here. So this one was built using a belt because I bought it used basically off of eBay, but it uses a belt which I would have built it with anyway. Originally, they had a chain, and the belt was actually an option that you can buy later on. And I think Kyosho used the chain because it was actually cheaper than using a belt on their models. So it was more of a cost thing. But the belts actually performed better because they were more efficient, and they I guess they were cheaper, to replace for Kyosho instead of this real intricate chain that you would have driving the wheels. And I think the chain was also used on a couple other four-wheel drive RC cars, 1/10 RC cars, off-road RC cars at that time. Um, the original Javelin had the chrome wheels, and they carried that to here also. And I did change out the Nerf bars on this. These are actually aftermarket Nerf bars from Pargu. They're pretty high quality instead of, and the original ones are actually plastic, but these are metal. I think they're aluminum or steel, or maybe a combination of both. But they're really rigid and really sturdy. And the original Javelin also had red shocks, which came from the Optima. These were re-released red shocks, but I took off the anodizing and polished them out because I wanted it to contrast a little bit more with this build that I had, and that's why I'm also using the gold chassis, because on the Turbo Optima, when that comes with this gold chassis, the body actually covers it, and I wanted that chassis to be, displayed a little bit more. And it's cool because it also comes with the bottom skid plate, which the Optima does not come with. I think the original Turbo Optima also came with this little floor pan or skid plate, and but it was silver. A couple other things. The tires are a little bit different than the original, but these ones do a great job of just giving that same vibe of the original, and they are the branded Sand Super tires. Um, on mine, I like to paint the the lettering on there just to give it that little extra bling on there. And also, the original had a different chassis or top plate, which had a cutout for the mechanical mechanical speed control servo. This one doesn't, and it's intended to be used with an electronic speed control. So, a couple things with this is this cage is, if you get a re Optima now and you want to convert it to a Javelin, that is possible, but you'll have to buy the cage along with a cage mount. So let me show you how that looks. Okay, so I'm gonna take this off right here. Now, I never had the original Javelin because I couldn't afford it. I was a kid and there was no way my parents were going to spend that kind of money for a toy, which is basically what it is. So it comes off like this. There's two mounts right here on the front, and so you got to be a little bit careful when prying this out because they're plastic. The cage is plastic. It's not a metal piece. And you don't want to break those off because these things are fairly expensive. So this is the cage right here. All right. And the way it mounts to the frame is you have your body pin that goes to the front, and also underneath here, there's two points in there to put body pins through, which go through these two holes right here to mount it down onto the chassis. This piece you'll also have to buy from Kyosho in order to use the cage. And then of course the cage set comes with this plastic rear piece right here. All right. So let me show you how I mounted the electronics. So obviously, looking at this, there's not a lot of room to mount the electronics, so you kind of have to be a little bit creative, I think, in order to clean up the wires on there. And I didn't want the wires showing as much as possible, especially since it's an open cage type of car. All right, and so what I did was I put the receiver right here in between, and you could probably see that in there a little bit. You see the wires going into the receiver right there from the servo and the speed control, and then the speed control is on the other side right here. All right, it's mounted sideways on the car. Okay, right there. And the electronics that I'm running on here are modern electronics. So this is a 13.5 brushless motor along with a brushless speed control. So I did have to make a modification on the top plate of the chassis in order to do this and clean it up a little bit. All right, so here's your driver figure. Okay, and that's a little mount for the driver figure. And here you can see that I did have to Dremel out a little bit of the top plate in order to get the speed control, most of the speed control through there. All right, and also I ran the wires through the rear shock mount. Okay, right there. So if you can see that right there. All right. Cool thing is that the re-release has this slipper adjustment right here. The original one again did not, and this particular speed control actually has a switch on the speed control itself. All right, there's a little switch in there, and I didn't want to have to take the body off in order to turn that thing off and on, so I basically cut a little hole in the driver figure thing right there, so that I can put a like a little tool in there, you know, it's a thin screwdriver or something in order to turn that thing on and off. I also added this extension right here, okay, for the speed control. What do you call it? A programming box, and that's basically a servo extension that goes right there, so that I could connect it to there without having to take apart the whole, you know, cage and driver figure and adjust it. So that's one modification basically that I did to this. Um, I did take off the stabilizers, the front and rear stabilizers, because the original Javelin did not have the stabilizers. That was an option part, but they did come standard on the original Turbo Optima. All right. So put this back on here. All right. There we go. Yeah, there's a lot of wires here that I'm running through, so I did have to cut out a little bit from the driver figure piece in order to get all the wires through the through the shock mount. So it's a little fiddly trying to get this back on, which is why I wanted to be able to adjust everything on the speed control without having to take this apart every single time. There we go. All right. And I didn't want the wiring and all that showing, especially through this roll cage body. Okay, so your driver figure goes back in there, and then put little little clip in there on the front to secure it. Yeah, this is probably one of the coolest cars from that time period. I thought, and that's why I just had to have it. And it's crazy because back in 1985, or between 1985 and the mid 90s, these cars were, I think the kits originally were selling for around $250, I think, just for the kit. And if you adjust that for inflation today, that's comes out to almost, maybe, let's say, $700 to $800 in today's money. So they were pretty pricey back then, and so I think the Kyosho Vintage series that it came out as actually a good value, I guess, is what you can say. And I don't know if a $300 toy is a good value, but it is what it is, and I'm really thankful that Kyosho did do the re-release, so able to kind of get the toys that we didn't get when we were younger. So yeah, belt drive, brushless motor, and basically, this just has that whole vibe from that era of RC cars, which a lot of people call the golden age, because during that time, to design these things, there wasn't like SolidWorks or any of that stuff. You basically had to kind of start from scratch, and the way these things look is, to me, is a big part of why I buy these things. I'm not really a collector. I just like cool stuff, I guess, and I do run these cars when I get them, because that's basically why I buy them, so I can run them. It's just fun for me to do that. But this is, again, my Kyosho Javelin re-release. There it is. side shot there. And I did put the actual sponsor decals on here. I think and these decals came from a sticker sheet from MCI for the original Optima. So you've got your Excel and Centerline. I just think it adds a whole lot more to the whole, vibe of the car itself, of the toy. So, but yeah, that's it. This is my Kyosho Javelin re-release. Thank you, Kyosho and Akira Kogawa, for making such a cool, RC car. And with that, it's all I got for you today. And God bless you. God bless America. And God bless the troops. Amen.